Hello and welcome back to Filter Optional. I am Chico West.
And I'm Shannon West.
And once again, it's a Happy New Year 2020. Here we are back in studio.
Yes.
For our first episode of the new year.
Decade.
New decade, yes.
Right.
The Roaring 20s. How about that? Hopefully, maybe it'll be that way. Maybe it'll be the Roaring 20s.
Maybe so.
Who knows? But I'm glad to be back in studio with Kevin. We always like having Kevin produce our show.
Yes.
Happy New Year, guys.
Yes,
Happy New Year to you as well. So today, just kind of recapping. We've been out of the studio for a while. We did a little traveling. Went down to San Antonio for the Alamo Bowl, Hook 'em Horns.
Yes. The win. We got a win. We got a bowl win.
We got a bowl win big time. That was fun.
Good. But I am a little. So the University of Texas doesn't go back to school until the 21st. Actually, the 21st, I think, a Tuesday. And Travis was here before Christmas, so it's like, and then he left for the bowl game, and then he's back now until the 18th. And I'm like, my back home baller is about to like kill me. Have y'all seen that Saturday Night Live skit, Back Home Ballers? Like, oh my gosh! I mean,
it's crazy because you get comfortable, and he was only home. For like 3 days, Christmas Day, and he flew out early the next day.
It was the 21st, 22nd, 23rd, 24th, 25th, and then he left on the 26th.
He came in on that Saturday, and basically, and so he hadn't been home as long as most of the college students from the University of Texas, but it's wild. You kind of get comfortable doing what you've been doing without one child in the house.
Well, it's a whole different schedule. Like, he's on break, which is so nice for him. And I'm kind of low key turning his room into a guest room.
Yes.
Without him realizing it. Like,
yes.
It's like turning the hot plate up a degree at a time.
Yeah, exactly. Because he doesn't see what happens is I did the first time he came home, because he left so shortly, like the day after graduation. And so I didn't have his room cleaned out. And so when he came home, he goes, I feel like I'm staying in a guest room. I feel like this is even my room, because his drawers were full. He couldn't really unpack and stuff. And so I strove to make it more welcoming for when he came home. But he's still the same kid that he was all growing up. He is messy. He is, doesn't hang stuff up. He is just like you.
Yes.
He doesn't put stuff up. He doesn't put things in drawers. He leaves drawers open. And so he has brought home everything from his locker at school. So he has like 4 piles in his room. The locker room pile, the shoe pile, the dressy clothes pile or whatever, athletic wear. I mean, he's got like 4 or 5 piles. So I asked him before he left the house the other day, I said, can you just organize your piles so that I know what to clean and what to wash and, whatever. And he goes, well, I thought my piles were organized. I mean, it's kind of...
In his way, they are.
They are, but...
it's not Shannon way or Beck way.
No.
But it is, in his way, he does have a method to his madness.
Anyway, so I've ordered him a new bed frame because he hasn't had one since he was a little boy, and it's time to turn his room into a guest room. So
yes. So that's good. So today's episode, I was thinking, because it kind of has to do with, this is a Casa Cleana production, and once again, Casa Cleana is a all male 90-day residential treatment program for addiction. We get down to the core wounds, we address those things, but really what I believe is people in general You know, what is our relationship like with God? You know, and how do I address those things? Because I can get wrapped up in anything, if there's addiction or even if there's not addiction. You know, and so I was reading today just this scripture verse, and I was thinking about it. For me, it's a couple verses. It says, "Do not lay up for yourself treasures on earth, where moth and rust destroy, and where thieves break in and steal. But lay up for yourself treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust destroys, and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, that your heart will be also." And so I was just thinking, I know I struggle with laying up my treasures, not here, really not here on earth, but here on, I do lay up my treasures here on earth, but not here in heaven. And so I was just kind of wondering, what are your thoughts, Shannon, about that? How we can get sucked into just materialism. Christmas just came about, all that kind of stuff.
Right. Well, I think you have to define treasures, first of all, because, you know, I did say that, you know, we had since Travis was able to come home for Christmas, and since both boys, you know, didn't really know what they wanted for Christmas, everything, I said it was kind of a bougie Christmas because I got them some designer, you know, items that normally I wouldn't buy for them and that they wouldn't expect me to get for them. And so I was really excited about them because I think they both like opened up gifts and they were like, "What?" But those are treasures. Yeah, they were like, "Mom got the Gucci." But
those are the best Christmases.
You know, right? So for a kid, so that is the best Christmases. Even for me, you know. I mean, so that's talking about those earthly treasures. But then, how many people on January 1st are still filled with joy because of that treasure that they received? I mean, truly, like this is going to sustain me for the year. Like, as far as joy, I would be willing to guess no one.
Well, it's crazy because, you know, as we get older, I love our little time, you know, as family. The other night, you know, one of my treasures was, you know, Travis made dinner for us, and I really enjoyed that.
Yes, but that's
I think in some way it's a treasure, you know. And then I called my buddy Mike Early, you know, who's in his 70s, and lives in Wisconsin, and I hadn't talked to him in several weeks. You know, he's retired now, lives up there. I go, "How are things going, Mike?" He goes, "You know what? This has been Christmas and the holidays started on the 15th and they just ended yesterday." And this phone call was yesterday.
Yeah.
And he goes, "It has been the best thing. Shelly and I have really enjoyed it." He told me to tell you hi.
Okay.
But the deal is his treasure was spending time with his kids and his grandkids. Yeah. And just excited that was the treasure,
yes.
You know, in there. It's like that. That's why I like, you know, do not lay up for yourself treasures on earth. Do not lay up. Do not store those. I like what you're saying. It's like on January 1st, how many were still excited about that?
Right. And so, and my thing is that I can get into. So now that we're kind of back to the routine because Beck's back in school and we're back at work and all that kind of stuff, and Travis is not. He's not doing anything, you know. But he's still on break and he works very hard all year. So I'm not ragging on Travis. I'm just saying our times are off. But so I'm trying not to store some of the earthly treasures could be, you know, my organization and my house being in order. I mean, it is so dirty right now and disorganized, and there's just stuff everywhere. And I can't. That doesn't mean anything in the whole scheme of things. And in heaven, I mean, you know, I need to embrace the fact that he's in my house and that he can hang out with Beck. I mean, he and Beck were in the hot tub, you know, last night till kind of late. But that to me, like, I need to look at it like, oh, how sweet that they get that time together and whatever, and I'll take whatever comes with it. But I woke up this morning, well, we have a dryer issue anyway. And so when you think about towels, both of them had used new clean towels, and both of those towels were on the ground downstairs. And, I try not to let that, I can't store up resentment either. I mean, I don't know.
I like what you're saying. That's that tough place is like, okay, what it comes down to, like, when I was first kind of introducing this topic is, at Casa Clean is like, man, it is about recovery, and addiction is really about a relationship with God. Do I have that relationship with God? Am I able to, really connect and pause and have that moment? But if I get focused on, these treasures of earth from, the gifts at Christmas or, being all organized. I mean, those things are fine and good. There's nothing wrong with those things, those inanimate things, or being real organized and getting things done. But really, when it comes down to it, where I know I struggle, I get focused more on earthly stuff than on what my relationship with God is.
Okay, and you haven't really segued into how that is with recovery. I'm struggling a little bit with the segue. You're not really making.
Yeah, how does it tie in?
Yeah,
how does it tie in?
It's
a good question, because it is kind of just random thoughts.
Yeah, you're kind of just having
right here.
Yeah.
And so I guess the segue is with recovery.
So do you think family, I mean, right now, this time of year, we talk about, like, is anybody really, happy with all of those earthly treasures on January 1st? Does it really give them joy? And it's like the Marie Kondo, have you heard of her? She's the, have you, Kevin?
No, I've not.
Oh, y'all. Okay. Every woman has, but it's.
We're out of the loop.
It's yes. Well, she wrote the book about you need to clean out your life, declutter your life or whatever. And you even go through your closet and you ask yourself if it gives you joy. Okay. So if it gives you joy, if it doesn't give you joy, you get rid of it. So we're talking about kind of joy, like on January 1, do all these earthly treasures. We had such a fun, Christmas and all that kind of stuff. Does it give you joy? Well, really only God can give you joy. That's a God word. I think joy is. Happiness is an earthly word. And so, you can be happy with all of these things. I'm happy with all the gifts. I'm happy with my kids, responses to it. But what brings true joy? And so also families are struggling in the recovery community. January 1st is a big day for a lot of people, a lot of families that are like, okay, now the rubber hits the road. We've got to figure out what's going on either with our loved ones or with ourselves. You might have a self-reflection of like, okay, I partied up. I went to awesome parties. I met a rock star over the holidays. I had the biggest blast. We got a bowl win and, whatever. Like, I had the biggest blast, but I have no joy. And I might have a problem.
I got designer gifts, and I have no joy.
I got designer gifts, but I still might be an addict. And I might need to get some help. So...
It's funny, actually, that you mentioned that. Sorry, guys, I don't mean to butt in.
No,
But in college, I was very interested in addiction and treatment courses, and there's this professor I like so much, I ended up taking 3 of his classes. And the way he always defined addiction is when any substance has driven all of the joy out of your life. He said that's when you know.
So, yeah.
I don't know if there's any...
No, I think that's
I don't know
good.
what the validity is of that, but...
I think there's a lot of truth to that because the only thing you have this fleeting glimpses of joy by when you're getting high and stuff like that, or you're taking away. I don't even know if it's fleeting glimpses of joy. You're taking away any pain or depression or anxiety by continuing to use. You can't find joy in the little things. And I was trying to look right here. I had a good illustration of joy, and I meant to write it down. But,
Joy,
I love what Henry Nouwen talked about when he talked.
Nouwen?
Nowen.
I'm kidding.
Henry
I'm
Nowen.
kidding. I'm kidding.
Nowen or Nowen.
That's
in
what
his,
Brene says,
Yeah, in
yeah.
his book, Life Signs.
Yes.
What he talked about in his professor, you're talking about your professor, Kevin, his professor would talk about fear and anxiety, and someone in the class asked, hey, speak to us about joy. You know, you've done this whole semester about fear and anxiety, but can you talk to us about joy? And the professor gave it a shot and only talked one class and goes, no, I need to get back to fear and anxiety. Joy is a hard thing to talk about.
Is it one of the feelings?
I believe it's one of the
Okay,
feelings.
Yeah.
joy is a feeling.
Joy
Yeah,
is
joy
a
is
feeling.
a feeling. But happiness, happy is not a
Happiness is
feeling.
not.
Happy is not.
Exactly.
Okay, so-
and so joy is that place of, you know, when we're stuck in addiction, or you don't even have to be in addiction. Is like, man, where am I finding my hope?
Right.
You know, where am I finding that joy? And if I can't, if I'm finding it in inanimate objects or in a substance, man, that's where I'm storing up my treasure.
Right.
And so when we're talking recovery, you ask that question is like, I first have to recognize, you know, am I an alcoholic or an addict? And if I am, okay, I have an allergy of the body and the obsession of the mind. But, you know, it talks about having that faith that if I have that faith that I can get that peace from my relationship with my God, then there is that
And
hope.
not a substance.
And not a substance or not
Or stuff.
or
Yeah,
stuff.
whatever.
All of a sudden there is hope. You
Yeah.
know, because all of a sudden I'm not comparing my insides to someone else's outsides.
Right.
You know, I'm finding joy and hope in the little things of the world. And how am I doing that? And I think a lot of it has to do also with, am I getting out of self? Because I don't think we recognize as people, I know I don't, how selfish and self-centered I am. I can talk about it. I can describe it. I can take ownership of my selfishness, self-centeredness. But I think we are, as people, driven by it.
Well, yeah.
And so being driven by it is like, we don't have a relationship with something greater than ourselves. We have a relationship with ourselves.
We want to maintain ourselves.
Yes. And so we think these inanimate objects or these substances will fill us up.
Right. Right.
And so it's hard to store your treasure up in heaven. But part of storing that treasure up in heaven is having first that faith. You know, faith that there is something greater than us.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Does that help articulate it, or am I still kind of vague?
I don't know.
I'm all right with.
Cleared it up for me.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that's good. I just, you know, yeah.
All right.
Oh.
You know, and here's the crazy thing is we're talking about this. It goes along with what Nowen talked about in his book when he gave the illustration with his professor. It's a lot easier to talk about, you know, fear, anxiety, depression, selfishness, self-centeredness. It is hard.
It's a lot easier in a like a school situation or a training situation, but it's not in life. Like,
Then personal.
I mean,
Yeah.
what are the suicide rates in January? I mean, you know, I'm a little down right now, even though I have Travis at home and we had a bowl win and you gave me a really nice watch for Christmas and everybody had a great time and my Christmas tree is up and things are organized and whatever, sort of, not really, but I'm kind of down. I mean, I'm like, oh,
I always get depressed after the
Yeah,
holidays.
yeah.
Pretty much every year.
Well, I didn't help that Christmas and
so
New
people
Year's,
don't talk about it.
you know,
really.
happened on. But they don't talk about it, but we can talk about it. You just talked about it. How hard is it, though, going back to what Nowen's saying, to talk truly about joy?
Well, yes, no,
That's what I'm talking about, is we can talk about it. Both of y'all just admitted, and I can identify with you as well. Tired, you know, little lethargic. Okay, here's another new year. I mean,
Yes.
I can talk about a lot of those things. You know, we come home, we complain. You know, it's a lot of those things. Women in your situation that have kids in school and in college, you know, there's some bitching about, you know,
there is, and there's sadness when they go back.
But how
too,
often do
so
we
then you're-
talk about those little things? Like I felt joy last night when I saw our boys in the hot tub and they were having a deep conversation. And I walked outside and, I could tell they were in this deep conversation. Okay, I'll leave y'all alone.
Yeah, yeah.
But I walked back inside and I had truly a sense of joy.
Yeah, no,
I
know.
liked
that brings me joy too.
I didn't, my selfishness, self-centeredness, oh, why am I being left out? I didn't think that.
Well,
but there's been times that I have.
Yes, you do tend to do that, but that's just your personality too.
Yeah, and I'm trying to work on that. But
Yeah.
it's like, man, the little things of joy is so hard to talk about.
Yes, but it's also hard to figure out about yourself. It's hard to pinpoint. Like, I'm going to use a real surface, shallow example right now. Is that so? When you and Travis were hunting, I started binge watching The Crown. Kevin, have you seen The Crown?
No, what channel is that on?
It's Netflix.
Oh, okay.
It's Netflix, and it's all about. It's. I guess. I don't even think it's historical fiction. It's all pretty historical, but obviously they go into private meetings between the Queen. It's all about the British, monarchy, and kind of like Downton Abbey. But
that's
all
why,
about
when you
the
said
Queen.
that, I assumed it was a BBC show at first.
Yes,
just 'cause it
well,
sounds
right,
like that.
right, and it's so good. It's really good, and it's really historical. But then, so as I'm watching it, I'm realizing that it's so hard for people to find joy when everything is predetermined for them, what they're going to believe. They can't even really worship their God so freely because they're under the church. Queen Elizabeth, she couldn't change anything because she's under the church anyway. And now we have Harry and Meghan. They've left the royal family basically, and it's because they weren't getting joy. They had a child, and I don't think they had any joy. And so it takes a while to pinpoint what will bring you joy. But really,
I think a lot of people in those positions are some of the saddest people on earth. That
totally
has to be a very feels like an empty existence, even though you're married, you have kids, family, and whatnot. But
everything is
you're under a microscope, and it's all formal and
yes, and
yeah.
everything is told to you. Protocol. You have to follow protocol on even talking to your parents.
But it happens with us here.
I know, so that's what I'm saying.
That's
what I was kind of getting to. Like, I'm watching The Crown, and then watching this go down in real life. Like yesterday, I'm like, wait a minute, like this is happening to everybody. Everybody's parents are, trying to control, and certain people can't find joy and.
Not to that level, but yeah, I know what you mean. But I compare it to people, and I don't mean it when it's unrude, but really, really rich families.
Yes.
I think there's a similar.
And I was thinking the same thing, but it's not rude. It's, I love what, when you talk about the super wealthy is just, they're just more comfortable in their misery.
Right. That's
you can fly the private jet, people are catering to you all the time.
That's right.
And it's like we run into that all the time.
We ran into it a few times over the holidays.
Yes.
There's so many examples in our life of people not experiencing joy, but then also not seeking the one that can give them joy or help this situation. But
and it's tough because we get that false, especially in our capitalistic culture, is we get that false perception of joy as well. And so people rebel against it.
What do you mean?
When I say rebel against it, that was wrong. Okay.
I'm just asking what you meant.
No, it's hard. And what I guess I was really trying to say is in our capitalistic culture, there's a lot of comparing. If I don't have this, they do. Am I missing out? Instead of pausing and going, that's storing up our treasures here on earth.
Right.
Right.
But if I do, can I have peace that transcends all understanding? If I do have that peace that transcends all understanding, that's because I have a relationship with God, the
Yeah.
Father.
Yeah. Well, you can get into self-pity with comparison. You can say, why? I was in self-pity this morning. I still kind of am, because I'm like, why can't my dryer work like normal? Like, why can't it just dry the clothes quickly?
Our podcast on what is normal.
What do you mean?
Why can't my dryer work like normal, like everybody else that has a dryer?
No. I mean, I didn't go there. You're kind of all over the place today, I have to say. But you're taking me to different places.
I completely agree.
2020 ADD.
This is a common trend with all first shows of the new year. Just so you guys know.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you. Because
It's like,
I'm like,
man, I
wow,
wanted to get a show in bad,
but
and I really wanted.
No, I think this is a good one. But I'm just trying to make my point is that I do get into pity where I'm like, why can't I have fun? Why did I have to get the flu? Why can't I, like I get self-pity thinking that those things are going to bring me joy,
Yes.
Why can't I go to Cabo right now, tomorrow? Why? Why
you
can't I?
You can, but it's probably not the
No,
wisest financial move.
No, it's not. I mean, I could
Technically.
Yes.
but
But is that going to bring me lasting joy?
Right, that's what I'm saying.
That's what I'm getting at is where does that lasting joy come from?
when I fall into self-absorption, self-pity, and absorption again, or self-centeredness, then I do think that that's going to bring me joy because I start to spin out like, why can't I want to go to Mexico tomorrow. I just want some sunshine and I want whatever. But instead of turning
That's not reality though.
Right. That's what I'm saying.
And in the reality, can I find joy here in the moment about the little things?
Yes.
And my deal is, going back to the recovery piece is, I have a daily reprieve contingent on the maintenance of my spiritual condition.
Right.
I truly believe that the recovery is about a relationship with God. Yes, I need to get the substances out of my system, but then really it's about surrender because my selfishness, self-centeredness is what is the driver.
Right.
And people don't realize that. And it keeps perpetuating the problem. And so, like, where am I going to store? It's not about the stuff. It's not about the substances. It's not about any of those things. It's about first and foremost and only my relationship with God. All those other things can cover that up. Pascal, a 14th century philosopher, talked about how we all have a God-shaped vacuum inside us.
Right.
Do I fill that up with
Try
the
to fill
stuff?
it.
But it'll leak out. The
Yeah.
only thing that can fill that God-shaped vacuum is God.
Right. Yes.
And so how do I store up treasures in heaven? And that's about, getting out of self and seeing that it's more about him than me.
Yes.
And that's that hard place.
Sure.
I struggle with that on a daily basis. What?
Nothing. I'm just laughing at you.
But is having a spiritual problem the same as having with the addiction stuff, they said the first step is admitting you have a problem or whatever.
Right.
But people who have a spiritual problem, is it they don't want to acknowledge that they do or that they don't realize they do? And is it kind of the same thing as having a chemical problem?
I think all of us have a spiritual problem.
Really?
Yes.
Even yourself, even though you're, an enlightened believer.
30 years sober, all that stuff.
Yeah.
I think on a daily basis, I will try to get back into trying to run the show myself. That doesn't mean I don't take action and step forward with what I need to do. But it does mean that, man, we all have this, need, like Pascal said, that God-shaped vacuum. And am I putting God in there or am I putting all this other stuff in there? So yes, the person that is, alcoholic or drug addict, they have an allergy of the body and an obsession of the mind. But I think every person is missing it. We all fall short.
So everyone has the capacity to have
not addiction.
To be spiritually content, though?
Everybody has the capacity to be spiritually content if they have a relationship with with God.
Right. But
And if they
that's different,
surrender.
harder for others to establish.
It I don't know if it's harder. It's just all about, I think we all have to surrender. I think self-will gets in the way, and some people's will's stronger.
Right.
Well, and I think people tend to wait until they have a situation that they absolutely can't control, a sick child, a
Death in the family,
death-
something like that.
yeah,
or-
something like that. when
Loss of a
they're like-
job, all those things.
when their last resort. You hope to go from, I look at it as kind of a graph. Like, I think when you start a spiritual journey, it's maybe because you are seeking it. And so you have this, like, you go to yourself first all the time.
Right. You don't want to be the atheist who gets cancer and says, God, please help me all of a sudden.
Right, exactly. And so you go to yourself long enough to where you all of a sudden can't go to yourself. It doesn't work anymore. So then you go to God. Well, you hope that slowly throughout your spiritual journey that you go to God more than you go to yourself. But I think every day we still, like when I woke up this morning, knowing what I had to do with the stuff that I had going on, I went straight to Google how to fix a dryer and whatever. And then all of a sudden I realized, anyway, I had no control over the situation. And so I went to my Jesus calling, like on my phone. I was like, I can't go anywhere else. But I think the hope is that you go to God first before you go to yourself.
And I believe,
It's a practice.
I
It's
think
like yoga.
stuff,
It's like everything.
I
It's
think,
a practice.
substances, but really stuff and all this stuff that, comes easy. Man, it's like, in a weird way, I feel joy when people see their need for God. And I'm not trying
Instead
to
of
be,
seeing it as a weakness, because a lot of people
Yes.
see it as a weakness if they
And
need,
so
if
it's
they
like-
need something besides themselves.
because we can cover it up with money and stuff and all those things, and it's like, man, they're just they don't see how, I mean, we all live and we all die. I mean, you cannot keep on living, and the deal is,
That's definitely out of our control.
it is totally out of our control.
Right.
And if you can't understand that there's something beyond this life, and it's all about right now, then man, you're missing out. And so it's like when people get that and go, wait a minute, there is something
Well,
greater
you're
than
missing you're missing out every day in your life, not just when you
Yeah.
die.
me. Exactly. And but it,
I mean,
I
Yeah.
agree with that. And what I'm saying is, I love, and it sounds sadistic. I love when people see that they're broken and they need to surrender, no matter what they have, because then it's like, wow, there is something greater. I don't want to see people suffer, but suffering doesn't need to be a bad thing.
well, it's because they can find joy in the suffering, which is
Yes.
is so counterintuitive. But it's like that graph I was loosely talking about. But the more that you can turn to God instead of yourself, the easier it will be to find joy in suffering. Like, we all go through stuff too. We all get fired from jobs. We all, get sick. We all have like
Life.
I mean, and a lot of us have big stuff that goes on, regardless of your wealth or whatever else. A lot of us have a lot of stuff that goes on. So I always say now that I have conditioned myself to hopefully go to God first, to say to people, well, I sure would rather go through this trial with God than without, because I can find joy in the suffering. And when it's over, like when we got audited in 2013,
Yeah.
it was 8 months of hell. I mean, it made me sick. It was terrible. It was a terrible year. And, but every day I would just pray that God take it away. Just take it away bit by bit. Just take this burden off of
Moment by moment,
moment by moment, day by day, just take this burden off my plate.
season by season.
And then I knew that at the end, I knew that it was going to end. I didn't know how it was going to end, but it would end, maybe with me dead. But
Yeah, hopefully not dead or in
I
jail or
mean,
something.
Right, exactly. And I knew it would end, but I knew that the joy that I would feel would be so much sweeter because I had I had prayed for that. I had prayed, and then it did end. It did finally end, and it was okay.
And it was okay. Okay.
I mean, it wasn't okay. It was fine, but just made it easier to accept. It just made, I don't know, joy and suffering.
I feel like if I was as enlightened as you, Shannon, I could have handled this tax season a lot better because I had that many times over.
And it's hard. That's
but
something
here's
that's
the
out
deal.
of your control.
But here's the deal. I don't know if it's, and I'm not, I appreciate you, giving that compliment to my wife. But the deal is, I don't know if it's as enlightened. The cool thing about Shannon is she just trusts God. She really has a deep faith.
Yeah, I envy that quality.
That there's that faith that, hey, okay, God's in charge. I need to do the footwork and the pain in the ass for 2013, which she had, the whole dining room table with all the receipts and everything like that. But the deal was her faith wasn't in the IRS or us.
And I was afraid. I was afraid. I mean, we were getting notices.
Yeah.
There was a lot of fear.
Oh, it's very fearful. I completely understand that.
But here's the deal is she kept going back. She kept having quiet times and stuff like that. It's like, we got to find that place where we start our day with that quiet time, where we begin that meditation. So I know today's episodes.
And then when you get to a place where you want joy as a part of your life, I did get to a place this Christmas where I knew that the material gifts that I was giving was not. I don't want my boys to think that is what gives joy, and I don't think they do. It was just kind of a fun, but I'm at a place where I know that those things don't give me joy. So I don't, it's like keep coming back. You keep coming back.
I think, they're at the age, and it's not something you do every year. I'm sure they get that.
No. Yeah.
But, today's episode, I was kind of all over the map, and I wish I'd spent more time in prayer and meditation.
Well, you know what? I just told somebody that is my intention for 2020 is to really be intentional about how I spend my time. So you can maybe do that too.
I will. And until next time,
Filter
Optional is out. Thank you.